All right, so ready for a deep dive? We're going to unlock those prompt engineering secrets today.
You're clearly interested in all this large language model stuff, and especially GPT-4.
And I got to say, going through these articles and notes you sent, some seriously cool stuff in there.
We're talking strategies you can actually use, the kind that'll have you practically whispering to LLMs.
Ever heard of a love letter written to a rubber ducky?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
What I find really intriguing about your deep dive request is this whole focus on prompt engineering.
It's everywhere these days, right?
But you clearly want to move beyond just the buzzwords and really understand the how and the why of talking effectively with these AI systems.
Exactly.
Like someone handed us the keys to a high-tech sports car.
But we're still kind of figuring out the whole stick shift thing,
A lot of these articles mention clarity is key.
Which sounds simple enough.
But why is getting those instructions just right so crucial for LLMs?
I think it's easy to forget that even with all their abilities, large language model, they don't actually think like humans.
They don't have intuition or pick up on subtle cues.
Their thinking is all about recognizing patterns and following instructions, literally down to the last detail.
So those instructions, they need to be crystal clear.
So it's less about saying, hey, write me something about Excel.
And more about being super specific.
Okay, give me a step-by-step on how to use that SUM function in Excel to add a column of numbers that have dollar values and make sure the total shows up in a column that's labeled total.
Precisely.
That level of detail, it makes all the difference.
And this leads us to some of the more, clever tactics they're using in prompt engineering, like this whole concept of persona.
You actually tell the LLM to take on a specific personality or writing style.
Well, I was fascinated by this one.
It's like those spy movies, right?
Someone whispers, okay, be the funny one, before sending an agent undercover.
So I could tell the LLM, write this like you're a playful friend.
And bam, my thank you note suddenly has way more personality.
But beyond just humor, is there a deeper reason why this whole persona thing works?
It all comes down to making sure the LLM's tone matches what you're trying to achieve.
If you need a formal email, you wouldn't tell the LLM to write like it's a casual text message.
Right. By setting the persona, you're basically fine-tuning the style and the voice of the LLM's output.
And it just highlights how these little communication tweaks can lead to dramatically different results and much more effective results, too.
It's like giving the LLM a stage direction.
And speaking of directions, let's talk about those unsung heroes delimiters.
Who knew quotation marks could be so crucial in the world of AI?
They're like road signs for the LLM.
And clearly marking where the instructions end and the actual information begins.
Without them, you risk confusing the model and getting muddled results.
And this kind of ties into another key tactic. Providing examples.
Yeah.
The show, don't tell of prompt engineering.
This one really clicked with me because I'm a visual learner, so instead of just describing the style I want,
I can give the LLM an actual snippet of text that shows that style.
Exact.
And this is super useful for mimicking styles that are, tough to put into words.
Say you want to capture the tone of, a 19th century novel.
Feed the LLM a passage from Dickens and watch it adapt.
It's like the LLM is absorbing the style through osmosis.
This next part feels like we're giving LLMs a serious upgrade, providing reference text.
It sounds like we're moving beyond just general knowledge and into specialized expertise.
That's a great way to put it.
By giving that reference text, you're essentially handing the LLM a specific knowledge base to use.
It's not just limited to what it learned during its initial training anymore.
Now it can access and process information that's super relevant to the task at hand.
So instead of just getting a general answer,
I'm getting one grounded in the specific context I've given.
That's incredible.
It's like having a research assistant who can instantly pull up the exact document you need.
Exactly.
And it gets even more interesting.
You can actually tell the LLM to cite its sources.
Wait, really?
You can give footnotes and everything.
Yep, got it.
This is a game changer for research and for fact-checking.
Imagine being able to trace the LLM's answer right back to where it got the information.
It adds a new level of transparency and credibility, which is crucial these days, right?
Okay, I'm kind of getting the sense that...
Prompt engineering, it's like having a superpower.
But one that needs the right tools and techniques to really, master...
That's a really good analogy.
And, mastering any complex skill, sometimes you got to break things down into smaller steps.
This is especially true when you're working with LLMs.
Especially on those tasks that have multiple layers, like reasoning or processing information.
So instead of asking an LLM to write an entire marketing campaign, like all at once.
It's smarter to break it down into smaller requests.
Exactly.
And by doing that, you're not just making it easier for the LLM.
You're also reducing the chance of any errors or, misinterpretations.
The material you shared actually highlights this whole idea of subtasks, which is
Wow.
basically
Taking that complex task and turning it into a series of smaller, more focused tasks
it's like creating a project plan.
instead of this giant, overwhelming task.
You have a bunch of milestones that lead you to the final goal.
So, like for our marketing campaign,
We might start by brainstorming catchy slogans,
then move on to drafting those social media posts.
and then finally tackle the email sequences. Each subtask, it builds on the last one.
It creates this logical flow of information and instructions, too, for the LLM.
This approach, it was illustrated really well. Remember that intent classification example?
Oh, the customer service bot.
It's like a triage nurse in an emergency room. Assess the situation, then you direct the patient to the right specialist,
Right.
instead of trying to handle every single customer query at once.
The bot first figures out what the user actually wants.
Are they having billing problems?
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Or is it something else completely?
Once that's clear, then the bot can access more specialized info or processes to handle the request.
Like a decision tree for solving problems.
Makes so much sense.
Speaking of problem solving,
There was this part in one of the articles about, giving LLMs time to think.
I kind of chuckled when I first read it.
But then the more I thought about it,
The more it made sense.
you can't rush these complex AI systems any more than we'd rush, a team of scientists working on some big discovery.
It's such a good point.
And it's something that often gets overlooked because we're all after those instant results, right?
LLMs can process info crazy fast, sure.
But there are just some tasks that need a more, deliberate and structured approach.
And remember how we were talking about how LLMs don't have human intuition?
This is where that difference really matters.
So if we just bombard an LLM with a really complex request,
And then we demand an answer right away.
we're basically asking it to make intuitive leaps that it can't make.
Exactly.
And that's where, chain of thought prompting comes in.
Instead of just jumping to the conclusion.
We prompt the LLM to, almost show its work, to lay out its reasoning step by step.
So we're kind of encouraging it to slow down a bit, consider different angles.
And then come to a more well thought out conclusion.
It's like asking a student to show their work on a math problem, right?
It's not just about the right answer. It's about understanding how they got there.
If they messed up, we can see where they went wrong.
And then we can help them fix it.
Exactly.
And being able to peek into that thought process.
It's so valuable, not just for spotting those errors, but for really understanding how these models think.
Okay, this next part about teaming up LLMs with external tools.
This is where I really started to geek out.
I love this idea that these models can go beyond their own databases.
And tap into a whole world of information and, capabilities.
I'll admit, though, some of the technical stuff was a little over my head at first.
So give me the simple version. Explain it like I'm 5.
Okay, so imagine this.
You're a brilliant chef, right?
But you're stuck in a kitchen with just basic ingredients and basic equipment.
Now imagine someone comes along and gives you access to, a pantry packed with amazing spices.
And a super high-tech oven that can do things you never thought possible.
That's kind of what we're doing when we connect these LLMs to external tools.
We're giving them a massive upgrade.
And access to way more resources.
So instead of just using the info they already have.
They can actually go find new, updated stuff in real time.
Exactly.
One example, it's called embeddings-based search.
Imagine you're working on a research paper and you need very specific info.
But you have to get it from this massive online library.
Instead of going through millions of documents yourself, you have a research assistant who can instantly scan everything and then pull up the most relevant stuff based on exactly what you need.
That's kind of what embeddings do for LLMs.
They can search for info based on, meaning and context, not just keywords.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's like having a superpower research librarian right there at your fingertips.
What are some other cool things that LLMs can do when we connect them up to these tools?
Get this. They can even write and run code.
Wait, hold on.
So we're talking about an AI that can understand my request for, say, some complicated data analysis.
But then it can actually write the code, run it, and give me back the results.
Yep, that's it.
And it's not just simple scripts either.
LLMs are being used to generate code for everything you can imagine.
Building websites, even making machine learning models themselves.
It's huge for anyone who works with data or automates tasks or builds software.
but who might not have the coding skills to do it on their own.
Okay, mind officially blown. This is like straight out of sci-fi.
But with all this incredible tech, how do we actually know it works?
How do we measure if our prompt engineering is any good and that we're getting what we want?
That's where, systematic testing comes in.
And it's an area that often gets overlooked.
It's easy to think that a clever prompt or a new technique is automatically better, right?
But without really testing it, it's just a guess.
So less, yeah, this feels better.
And more, the data proves this is better.
Exactly.
We need to treat prompt engineering like any other science experiment.
Come up with a hypothesis, design the experiment, get the data, analyze the results.
So instead of just crossing my fingers and hoping for the best,
I actually need to test my prompts, systematically.
Comparing different versions and then measuring how they perform based on, some rules I set beforehand.
Makes sense, but where do I even start with that?
It's not as hard as it might seem.
Even a simple AD test can be super helpful.
So you start by figuring out what success looks like.
How accurately does the LLM complete the task? Or
how well does it stick to that specific writing style you want?
Then you create 2 versions of your prompt, a control, and then a variation where you tweak something specific.
And then you run them both through the LLM and compare the results.
That does sound surprisingly straightforward.
It's like testing out different ingredients when you're cooking to see which one tastes the best.
Exactly.
And just like a chef relies on their taste buds to get the recipe just right.
We can use data and these tests to fine-tune those prompts and really get the most out of large language models.
Remember that table from one of the articles?
It showed how even a small number of tests can really boost your confidence in the results.
You don't need a ton of data to start making better decisions.
That's good to know, that even small-scale testing can be useful.
We've covered so much ground today, it's amazing.
We started with understanding why being clear in our instructions is important.
And then we got into these really cool techniques like persona and subtasks.
Even connecting LLMs to those external tools, remember that.
So what's the, main takeaway?
What should our listeners keep in mind as they're, heading off on their own prompt engineering adventures?
For me, it's
we got to shift from being just users of the text
to being active collaborators with the AI.
It's not just about typing something in and hoping for the best anymore.
We're learning how to speak their language,
Understanding what they're good at and what their limitations are.
And then we can guide them to get the results we need.
It's like we're learning to talk to a whole new species.
One that could completely change how we work and learn and create.
And just like with any new language,
mastering this takes practice and experimentation.
And a willingness to, embrace the unknown a bit.
What we know today, it's just the beginning.
I love that.
It's only the first chapter in a really long and exciting story.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they explore this new frontier?
Here's something to think about.
We talked about giving LLMs that reference text to, expand their knowledge.
What if you use your own creative work?
Imagine feeding the LLM a short story you wrote.
And then asking it to help you develop a character or even explore a different plot twist.
Could that help you be more creative?
That's a really cool thought.
Using AI as, a thought partner, someone to collaborate with you?
I can already feel my imagination going wild.
Huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of prompt engineering.
Remember, the most important tool you have is your own curiosity.
Until next time, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries.
See what's possible with language.